The day my wife was buried, my daughter-in-law was already doing math. I didn't see it at first. You don't, when you're standing at a graveside in November, watching the ground swallow the person you spent 31 years building a life with. Margaret. My Margaret. She had a way of laughing that made strangers turn around in restaurants just to see what was so funny. She grew tomatoes in the backyard that were honestly too good for a woman who claimed she couldn't cook. She was the one who remembered everybody's birthdays, who kept the Christmas card list updated, who called my mother every Sunday even after my mother forgot her name. When she died, ovarian cancer, 14 months from diagnosis to the end, I didn't think about the house or the business or any of it. I thought about how the bed was going to feel. My son, Trevor, was there at the funeral. His wife, Lydia, stood beside him in a charcoal coat I'd never seen before. She hugged me at the reception and said all the right things. She was always good at saying the right things. 2 weeks later, she called me to schedule what she kept referring to as the family meeting. I told her I wasn't ready. She said, gently but firmly, the way a person speaks to someone they've already decided is a problem to be managed, that it was important to handle these things before they became complicated. We just want to make sure everything is taken care of, Dad, she said. She'd started calling me Dad when Trevor and she got married 12 years ago. I used to like it. That morning, it sounded like the opening line of a contract. The meeting was at my house. My house. The one Margaret and I bought in 1998, a split level in Burlington, Ontario, with a backyard that backed onto a creek. We'd replaced the windows twice, the roof once, put in a new kitchen in 2015 because Margaret said the old one made her feel like she was cooking in a submarine. Every corner of that house had a memory attached to it like a price tag you can't quite get off. Lydia arrived first, 20 minutes early, which I should have recognized as a tactical move. She had a folder, an actual manila folder with printed pages inside. Trevor came in behind her looking at his phone. My daughter, Fiona, came in from Hamilton with her husband, a quiet man named Alistair, who fixed furnaces for a living and always seemed vaguely embarrassed to be anywhere indoors. We sat in the living room. The couch still smelled faintly of Margaret's hand cream. I noticed Lydia had taken the armchair, Margaret's chair, without thinking about it, or maybe because she had thought about it. She opened the folder. So, she said, now that Mom is gone, we really need to get the business sorted out. The business was a commercial refrigeration company I'd started in 1994, Harper Cold Systems. We serviced grocery chains, restaurant groups, food processing plants from Oakville to Kitchener. 23 employees at peak, 18 now. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I'd built it from a second-hand van and a used set of tools. Margaret had done the books for the first 6 years from our kitchen table. The company was worth somewhere between $2 and $3 million, depending on who you asked and why they were asking. Lydia had clearly been asking. Trevor and I have been talking, she said, and we think the cleanest solution is to transition the ownership to Trevor now, while you're still here to oversee it. That way there are no estate complications, no probate delays, nothing messy. She said messy the way people say it when they mean expensive for us. I looked at Trevor. He was looking at the folder. You'd obviously still have a role, Lydia continued. A consulting position we'd make sure you're taken care of. A salary, benefits, something reasonable. A salary. In my own company, a consulting position, which was a phrase that meant absolutely nothing in the company I had built from nothing. I didn't say any of that. I said, I see. Fiona made a small sound from the couch. Alistair looked at the floor. We'd also be looking at the house, Lydia said, moving smoothly to the next item in her folder, as though she were presenting a quarterly report. It's a lot of space for one person. Trevor and I have been renting in Mississauga for 3 years now, the market being what it is. I'm aware of the housing market, I said. Of course. She smiled. It was a careful smile, patient, the kind you practice. We're just thinking about what makes sense going forward, for everyone. I asked Fiona what she thought. She looked at her hands and said she just wanted everyone to be okay. I said I needed some air and went out to the backyard. The creek was low for November. The neighbor's dog was barking somewhere down the row. I stood on the deck that Trevor and I had rebuilt together the summer he was 22. The summer before he met Lydia. when he still called me on weekends for no particular reason. I thought about a conversation Margaret and I had in a hospital, about 6 weeks before the end. She'd been having a better day. The light through the window was good. She asked me to hand her the cup of tea from the bedside table, and then she held it in both hands and said, "I need to tell you something about the will." I told our lawyer, a man named Philip Chow, who'd handled our affairs for 15 years, to come to the house the following week. I told him what Margaret had told me. He'd made notes and nodded and said very little, the way good lawyers do. I hadn't told Trevor, I hadn't told Lydia, I hadn't told anyone. I went back inside. Lydia was refilling her coffee in my kitchen. She'd found the good mugs without asking. I stood in the doorway and watched her open the wrong cupboard looking for sugar, then the right one, and she didn't notice me until she turned around. "Everything okay?" she said. "I want to show you something," I said. I went to the hallway closet. On the top shelf, behind a box of old tax returns and a bag of Margaret's winter scarves I hadn't been able to move yet, there was a gray shoebox. Inside the shoebox was a letter in Margaret's handwriting. Beneath the letter was a sealed envelope from Philip Chow's office, with both our signatures across the seal. I brought it to the living room and set it on the coffee table. "Margaret left something," I said. Lydia's eyes went to the envelope immediately. "What is that?" Trevor said. He put his phone down. "Your mother wrote a letter," I said. "She asked me to read it before Philip comes next week. She asked me to read it to the family." I unfolded the letter. It was 3 pages, in Margaret's careful, slanted cursive. She'd written it in September, in the hospital, on the yellow legal pad she used for everything. I recognized the dents her pen made when she pressed hard because she was thinking. I started reading. Margaret's voice came back to me as I read. That's the only way I can describe it. She'd been gone for 17 days, and she was suddenly in the room again, talking the way she talked when she'd made a decision she felt completely at peace with. She wrote about the company. She wrote about the fact that she had watched, for the past 4 years, the way Lydia spoke to me at family dinners. The way she interrupted. The way she'd started CCing herself on emails from the company accountant without asking. The way she'd suggested, twice at Christmas and once at Easter, that maybe it was time for me to step back. She wrote that she had never said anything because she had hoped she was wrong. She wrote that she had stopped hoping she was wrong somewhere around the time she overheard Lydia on the phone in our upstairs bathroom at Thanksgiving, telling someone that the business will basically pay for itself once it's in Trevor's name. I heard Lydia set her mug down. Margaret wrote about Fiona. She wrote that Fiona had called her every second day during the treatment, that Fiona had driven to Burlington 14 times in 14 months to sit with her, bring groceries, sleep on the couch when I was too tired to keep watch. She wrote about Alistair showing up one Saturday with a toolbox and spending 5 hours installing grab bars in the bathroom without being asked. She wrote that she knew Fiona would never ask for anything, and that was precisely why she was making sure she didn't have to. She wrote about me. I had to stop for a moment at that part. I'm not going to repeat it here. Some things are private, even now. Then she got to the legal part. She wrote that she and Philip had amended the family trust the previous July. The house remained mine, held in a life interest trust, meaning it could not be sold, transferred, or leveraged without my consent, and would pass to Fiona upon my death. The company had been transferred, via a corporate reorganization Philip had arranged, into a holding structure that named me as the sole controlling shareholder, with Fiona as my designated successor. Trevor retained a minor interest, enough to inherit a fair percentage in the event of my death, but no operational authority, no voting rights, and no path to ownership unless Fiona consented. The folder on the coffee table suddenly looked very small. I finished reading. I folded the letter along its creases and set it down. Nobody said anything for a long time. Trevor looked at Lydia. Lydia was looking at the sealed envelope from Philip's office the way you look at something you've already calculated the value of and are now being told you've calculated wrong. "That's not," she started. "Philip will be here Thursday," I said. "If you have questions, you can ask him then." "Trevor." She turned to him. "Say something." He looked at me. I don't know what he was looking for. Some sign of negotiation, maybe. Some indication that this was an opening position rather than a conclusion. I had no negotiation left in me. Margaret had been the one who smoothed things over, who found the language to make difficult things soft enough to swallow. I was just the man who fixed refrigeration units. I was just the man who'd been going to sleep for 31 years beside the woman who had, even from a hospital bed in September, somehow known exactly what this room was going to look like in November. Your mother made her wishes clear, I said. I intend to honor them. Lydia picked up her folder. She said something about needing to process this, about how emotional this all was, about how nobody was trying to be adversarial. Trevor nodded along the way he'd been nodding along to her for 12 years. They left before 3 o'clock. Fiona stayed. Alistair heated up the casserole someone from my street had dropped off, and we ate at the kitchen table without saying much. At some point, Fiona reached across and put her hand over mine and didn't say anything at all, which was exactly right. Philip came on Thursday as planned. He walked Trevor and Lydia through the trust documents with the calm efficiency of a man who had seen this kind of meeting many times before. Lydia asked several questions that were really just the same question in different clothes. Was there any way to contest this? Philip answered each one the same way. Margaret had been of sound mind and had signed with independent legal counsel present. And no, there was no practical avenue for a challenge. Trevor called me the following Sunday. It was the first time he'd called without Lydia being the one to initiate it in longer than I could remember. He didn't say much. He said he was sorry things had felt so tense. I said I knew. He said he didn't always know how to stand up for himself. I said I knew that too. We stayed on the phone for 20 minutes, talking mostly about nothing. The Leafs, the weather, the fact that the furnace in his rental had started making a noise. I told him to have Alistair take a look at it. He laughed. It was the first time I'd heard him laugh since the funeral. It sounded like him again. Like the kid who helped me rebuild the deck at 22, the one who used to sit on the garage floor watching me work and asking questions I didn't always know how to answer. I don't know what happens next with him. I don't know whether Lydia will soften or whether she'll push him further away from me. I know that I can't make that choice for him. Margaret couldn't either, and she tried longer than anyone should have to. What I know is this: the house is still mine. The creek still runs low in November. The tomato plants are dead for the season, but I left the cages up because I'm going to plant again in May. Margaret always said the Roma variety did best in our soil. I have no reason to believe she was wrong about that. Philip called last week to say the trust administration was wrapping up and that everything was in order. He said Margaret had been very thorough. I said that sounded like her. He laughed a little and said it did. I still go to the office 3 days a week. The crew doesn't treat me like a consulting position. They treat me like the guy who signs the checks and knows where every compressor and every grocery chain between here and Waterloo was installed and when it last needed service. That's what 30 years buys you. Not a title, just the knowledge that nobody else has yet. Fiona came last weekend with the kids. Her youngest, a 7-year-old named after Margaret's mother, found the shoebox in the closet and asked what was in it. I told her it was a letter from her grandmother. She asked if she could read it someday. I said yes. I said someday I'd read it to her, just like I read it to everyone else, and she'd understand exactly who her grandmother was. She seemed satisfied with that. Kids usually are when you give them an honest answer. I made dinner. It wasn't very good. I'm still learning to cook for a smaller table. But nobody complained. We ate, and the kids argued over the remote, and Alistair fixed the latch on the back door that had been sticking since October. And for an hour or two the house felt less like a place that was missing someone, and more like a place that still had reasons to stay warm. That's what I've got. Some days that's enough. Most days, honestly, it is. I keep thinking about the folder. Not in anger anymore. That passed somewhere around the 3rd week of January, around the time the creek out back started to freeze over properly. I think about it because of what it represented. Someone had sat down, printed pages, organized tabs, and brought that folder into my house 2 weeks after I buried my wife. That level of preparation tells you something. It tells you the plan had been ready for a while, just waiting for the right moment, waiting for Margaret to be out of the way. And here's what I've come to understand about that kind of thinking. It always miscalculates, not because the universe punishes greed in some mystical, tidy way. I don't believe in tidy. I believe in cause and effect, the plain, unglamorous kind. Lydia had spent years watching our family, reading its structure, deciding where the weak points were. What she missed, because she was only ever looking for weakness, was that Margaret had been watching too. Quietly. From her chair. From hospital rooms. From a legal pad in September. Margaret had been paying attention far longer, and her attention came from a different place entirely. Not from wanting something, but from wanting to protect something. That difference, in the end, was the whole ballgame. I raised 2 kids. I spent 30 years building a business with my hands and Margaret's bookkeeping and a lot of 6 a.m. mornings. I am not a philosopher, but I've learned that the people who last, in families, in business, in any of it, are the ones who do the right thing when it costs them something. Fiona drove to Burlington 14 times in 14 months. Nobody asked her to. There was no folder, no plan, no angle. She just showed up, because that's who she is. And Alistair fixed the grab bars on a Saturday without being asked, because that's who he is. Those 2 people didn't do those things because they expected an inheritance. They did them because their character didn't leave them much choice. That's not weakness. That's the most durable kind of strength there is. Trevor is harder to reckon with. I love my son. I also watched him sit in my living room and not say a word while his wife proposed turning me into a tenant in my own life. That silence cost him something he hasn't fully understood yet. I don't know if he'll find his way back to himself, to the kid on the garage floor asking questions. But I think he's trying. The phone call helped. Small steps. I've seen enough to know that a person's character isn't fixed. It just takes honest pressure to show you what it's actually made of. What I know now, more clearly than before Margaret died, is that the wisest thing I can do with whatever years I have left is to keep my own house in order. Not the building, though I'm doing that too. I've already ordered the Roma seeds for May. But the inside of it, to stay clear-headed about who people are and what they're actually doing, not just what they're saying. Margaret had that quality. She saw through surfaces without making people feel seen through. I'm still learning it. I was always better with compressors than with people, but I'm paying more attention now. The folder is in the recycling. The shoebox is still on the top shelf of the closet. Some things you keep and some things you let go, and knowing the difference is, I think, what the whole business of getting older is actually for.